Okay, so I guess we can get going. So we have a few regrets. Janice Payton and Carrie Elwood are both ill, and Esther as well. And Tom Weber is out of town, but he sent us an email to say that he trusts will make trustworthy decisions. So there you go. So Len, help me out here. Do I start out with, we had at our last meeting moved the budget out of order to make it our current piece of business. So do we start with that then? Or do we just start where we...
Oh, okay. Actually, in this case, it probably doesn't really matter. You could probably start at 4 if you want to understand that's where you ended. If you want to do it in order.
That'd be my preference. We're okay with that? Okay, so then we'll start with that. Item number 4. So Sheila had provided us with some information regarding this. Does anybody want to hear the information again, or do you have any questions? Or page 24.
Yeah. I don't remember.
Okay, so no questions or comments. So there's a recommended motion there. Somebody wants to make that, or if you have some comments, you want to make a different motion, it's up to you.
So we'll move the recommendation.
Okay, does anybody want to second that? Second for debate. Okay, Danny, do you want to open?
If I remember back when the program first started, we actually did have some of those students in that age group here. And the previous board basically eliminated them. There was a bit of an outcry to have them reinstated, but again, now it's coming as a recommendation from the international program.
Anyone else like to speak to this? Fran?
So there's a question that I've just brought up. Is there any extra attention given to the younger students, like in terms of home, stay support?
I think basically found that it just would be different. I think the activities and the things that the program provides would be age appropriate. And, certainly being part of the school community is different in elementary than it is if you're in secondary and participating in sports and extracurricular. So they really are meant to become one of our students. So the same sorts of activities that an elementary student would have are provided.
And as far as from the international program for the homestay parents.
For the homestay parents, I would imagine that, given the expertise of our homestay coordinator, that I know that they've certainly thought through the types of things that would have to be there and available to support those families. I know in the year when there were families, they became very close to those children. There was a really nice bond that developed between, families, certainly their children and the parents and our international students. So I know that they felt that it was a very worthwhile endeavor.
Okay. Anyone else? Breen?
I guess for me, I have a child in grade 6, and for me, it seems very young. These are kids who still, despite the fact that they think that they're all grown up and they think they're independent, and they think they can do these things. I know from experience, as this is my last child, or who's been through this stage, that they're not necessarily, they still need a lot of parenting and nurturing and that sort of thing. And some of the cultures these kids come from are cultures where you don't question authority, you don't complain, you don't show weakness, you don't. And so I worry that some of these kids might come and be homesick or lonely, or maybe they even get placed, and I don't know if this happens very often, but I have heard stories where some of the homestay places are not what they're used to, not as hands-on, not as involved as, and I worry about kids of this age and that they won't complain because their culture won't allow it, I guess is what I'm saying. So I do have some concerns too. I don't know. It's the mother in me, I guess. It just seems awfully young to me.
If I could respond to that, I think it is, we have to remember it is a cultural thing. When you talk about the way that cultures are, the other piece of that is that this ability to go away and to receive this education and this opportunity is a cultural one as well. And, from my perspective, I think it's awesome that they get an opportunity to experience the type of culture that we can offer, if in fact there is that kind of difference. So I know it seems young from our, North American motherhood, and apple pie and all of that sort of thing, but it is a real cultural difference. If they weren't coming here, they'll be going somewhere. And I'd like to see them come here.
Can I add to it?
Yep.
Through you, Madam Chair? Some years ago at Puntledge, we started off with this program, and we actually had them in grade 4, grade 5, and grade 6. And I can tell you that the homestay coordinators do incredible work around making sure that there's a nurturing, welcoming family for these children. It's deemed that, and the principal of the international program deemed that grade 6 would be probably the most appropriate of elementary to come forward, 6 and 7. And I've talked to several of the parents, the international parents, because it was something I was concerned with when I was the principal at Puntledge. And they basically told me that this was the greatest gift they could give their child, to come to Canada, to come to our school district, and for their children to learn our way and to learn to speak English. And so I know it's very different. It would be hard for you or, any of us maybe to send our grade 6s, but for them, this is a great gift that they're giving their children. And that's how they see it in their culture.
Julie, did you want to speak to it at all?
Well, I just, I have some mixed feelings too. I think the kids would have been fine, but I would have been traumatized to have them gone for an extended period of time at that age. But even now, it's actually different. But I do accept that there are some differences there. What I'd like is if we go ahead with this, that's some really close monitoring of this issue, and that there be a report, and that there'll be, staff will really pay attention and work with Rob to make sure that he and his staff are comfortable and it's a good program.
And for me, I remember having this discussion with the last board, and one of the things that was said at the time was this is really a values discussion. There's not really a right or a wrong answer to this. It just depends on what a person's values are. And so my values at the time were that 10-year-olds are not appropriate to go abroad to someone else's family to spend significant parts of their childhood away. And my values remain the same way at this time, and I don't think that I would be able to support homestay for younger students. I said at the time I would be fine if they came with a family member and stayed with a family member here. I still think that that's a great thing if they have that value, that they wish their kids to come and experience another culture. Great. We would love to have you here, but please bring a family member with you, and we're open doors to. But to send someone away, that doesn't line up with my values, and so I would be voting against this. So did you want to...
Correction, unless they're extremely smart at grade 6, they're not going to be 10 years old.
You could be. Yeah, you could be turning 11 later in the year. Do you want to close?
No.
Okay. So the motion is to offer homestay beginning at grade 6, effective for the 11-12 school year. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to student travel requests next. Sheila, you put that one in here?
Travel requests, we have them, let me find them.
Page 25.
Page 25. For you, Madam Chair. Asking for request for approvals for out-of-province field trip requests for Mark Isfeld French immersion to Quebec in January to early February of 2012. Details are yet not firm, but we're asking for this early, seeking approval in principle. And the application as well for Highland Band Choir trip to San Francisco as well has gone through our hearing. We're asking again these applications be reviewed. This is May 1st to return May 7th, and that's this year. Jeff Taylor has reviewed both the applications and have contacted the schools with any follow-up, and they do conform with our travel policy.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions with respect to these? Fran?
I just want to note that as a proposed chaperone for the Highlands, I'm going to abstain from voting on that one, so if we can separate them.
Yeah, that would be fine. Okay. Any questions with regards to either one of these? Okay, so someone want to make a motion on the first one, please?
would move that we approve in principle the Marcus Bell French immersion trip to Quebec.
Second? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you.
I would also move that we grant final approval for the Highland Secondary School Band Choir trip to San Francisco.
Have a seconder?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Is one of the schools that they're going to visit is Martin Luther Elementary or Middle School, and it's a school that has a phenomenal program called Edible Schoolyard. And I'm like, Edible Schoolyard? Okay. It's in conjunction with Alice Waters or Chez Panisse, and they have reclaimed and built a farm in the middle of downtown Berkeley, so I'm hoping Fran will have a chance to go see it and bring back some information. There's a book and a website. You can watch kids gathering honey and talking to their chickens at the school.
Talking to their chickens?
Well,
Is that like a second language?
Well, yeah, they do speak. Anyway, it's very exciting, and that's the Lake Trail vision is great.
Okay.
I was excited to notice that.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to Len's Secretary Treasurer report.
Sure. And the first one there would be a motion to reopen Cape Lazo. This is middle school. It's a housekeeping one, of course, given the decision the board has made about Brooklyn Elementary. So I did do that quick research through the School Act and the, I forget what it is, but anyway, the policies of the ministry. And it's clear it doesn't have to be a bylaw. It can be just by motion. So I proposed the motion there that the board rescind the motions to close Cape Lazo Middle School, school facility number 7171057, made it by bylaw on May 13th and 15th, 2018.
So a motion to rescind, that's part of the board procedural bylaws, so I would take it that then the notice, we have received notice by virtue of having received this information in our agenda package.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so you see the motion before you. If someone would like to make that or make a different motion.
What are we going to do that?
Sheila? I'll use this button I thought here. You're going to hang the
I move that the board rescind the motions to close Cape Lazo Middle School, school facility code 7171057, if that's correct, made by bylaw at the May 13th and May 15th, 2008 meetings.
Seconder, yeah. Okay, any discussion? Okay.
Well, we will obviously need to undertake a school naming process as well.
It'll come.
Yeah.
Okay? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So, Len, the status of the budget was that we read the bylaw once, and I'm just wondering, Ron did a great job of providing us with some information. If you have anything you want to add, or?
I think probably, given I'm not, I guess not being here and not knowing what questions were asked, I'll just leave it open to questions and see if I can do my best to answer any that people might have.
Okay, anyone with some questions? Sheila.
I noticed that there's a line of, maybe it is, it's in a different place, maintenance of grounds. It looked to me like there was nothing in the maintenance of grounds budget, but I see that it is. It's on a different page, yeah. I just wondered if we weren't doing it or if we put it in with the other maintenance, but I see that it is there.
I have a question with regards to the NIDES, since our initial estimate of a possible loss of funding may be in the 15% range, so how much is that?
It could be as much as $200,000 to $400,000 for the range.
Is that what I'm anticipating for next year?
That's for next year, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. I have some questions with respect to what our process is going to be for considering next year's budget too.
Sure.
I wonder if we can
Yeah, if I
talk
can.
about that after this.
Sure, or now.
Danny, you have a question?
Yeah, it's just a quick one. If I'm reading this right, our final student count last year was 8131. we predicted approximately 90 less students in our preliminary budget, and we actually finished up about 138 more than what we anticipated, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So that accounts for the $690,000 extra on teachers and $83,000 in substitutes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you want to read the bylaw for the second time?
I would move that School District 71, Comox Valley, 2010-2011 amended annual budget bylaw in the amount of $74,941,717 receive second reading.
Seconder? Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And a third time?
I would move that School District Number 71, Comox Valley, 2010-2011 amended annual budget bylaw in the amount of $74,941,717 receive its third and final reading.
Seconder? Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So Len, could you give us a little information on what further process? I know in the past we've, the Budget Advisory Committee's been involved, and last year we met with the principals, vice principals, which was a great process, and we had some public meetings. Had an opportunity to hear from people if they thought things should be added or taken away.
Sure.
So just wondering.
So, given the motion that we passed in the previous year on staffing, that piece would be sort of set, but I'm certainly looking, to bring more information back, both to the back as well as the trustees if they've had some changes that they wanted to do. Now, I'm not sure if you want to have a sort of chance to put some things forward to the back for consideration and then take to the public, or if you wanted to go to the public and then bring it back through the back. I'm not quite sure. Whichever way the board would like to do it, I'm happy to have those kind of discussions.
So I guess for me, I wonder about, I think I've heard some chatter amongst trustees, and there are trustees that have got some things that they're interested in bringing forward. They're all add-ons, they're not takeaways. But I wonder, in the past, people in the public, schools, groups of teachers and so forth have had an opportunity to bring their ideas forward for consideration. So how would we handle all of that, and are we soliciting for proposals, or what are you thinking this year?
Okay, well, it seemed to me when last time I did solicit for proposals for additions, it wasn't a very popular thing because there was quite a bit came forward and it seemed to have not gone well in most people's estimation. I think, those people are, represented through BAC, obviously have an opportunity to put some things in front of the trustees. And my thought was that they would then, the trustees who attended BAC would possibly bring that forward for a discussion and then a decision about how we might want to move forward, if the board wants to move forward on doing those sort of additions or changes, that are still out there. The principals and vice principals we're definitely going to meet with, is it this week? Next week. We're going to have that meeting with them. We will do that process with them as well. And then also bring that back to the board for discussion.
I guess we wouldn't be able to then get any feedback on any ideas that we have or that other people in the public have if we wouldn't have that in a timely way. So.
Sure, and that's what I was trying to ask. Sorry if I didn't do it very well. Is that I think if you want to give public input into it, I think then we probably need to get on and have that public meeting so people can have a chance to do that. My recommendation, would be to have an open house then here, and I can go through, have just some of the information about the budget around the room and take questions of people, and a couple of, or fellow trustees, however many want to come, could come and listen to what people might want to tell them about it.
Separate submissions to the budget advisory.
Sure, and we can do that, sure.
How could we notify people that they should give written submissions to the, so let's say that there's a, no, I know, hopefully they'll write something in the newspaper, but, I mean, for our staff, for example, there's a group of specialty teachers that wants to put a proposal forward. We've had a lot of those in the past. How would they know that they could do that now? And
sure. If the board is willing to entertain all of those, certainly I'm happy to put out a notice to be posted at all the schools and put it on the web. We can ensure that there's a wide distribution if you want to do that.
Okay, well, maybe I can just, Sheila?
I'm just wondering, in the past, there was a meeting at which there were representatives from each of the schools, and they presumably were bringing the items that were coming from their school growth plans, and that the budget was being driven by what was identified as the school growth plan, and that school growth plan is immediately identifying student achievement as its goal. So it means that the budget's really being driven at a local level by student achievement. Wasn't always as effective as it could have been. There could be more training about what people were to bring, but that seemed to me, when I think about how is our budget put together, much more successful if it's driven by the school's needs, identified through their school growth plans, and then also identified by particular groups. Like, you know, I've always had this idea of the music teachers or the phys ed people getting together and really prioritizing their parts of the budget, you know. But to be putting out a call for proposals that are going to come in from outside of that student achievement measurement, measurable commitment to student achievement process that is sort of set up, I'd be concerned about it. So I'm wondering, is that meeting happening, or is that part of the back process?
If I could, I mean, the back process was really meant as a replacement for that. But, you know, but that said, it certainly isn't a bad idea to go back. And it was the school planning counselors who we tried to meet with and have that discussion at that level, because you're right, they are the people that are, you know, should know what their school growth plan is, should know what, you know, they really need. And that really, if you look at the School Act, that's what it says.
It is. The School Act, that's how the budgeting is to be based on student achievement through that process. And I think that kind of calls for proposals, sets up a sort of a competitive thing that doesn't necessarily always have a link to student achievement as perceived by the schools or by the district functions, across the district-wide functions. And that, to me, is the most sustainable format for budgeting.
Shuts down debate, though, too. Then we wouldn't hear from, say, the music teachers or the PE teachers or
Oh,
something.
no, I'm all in favor of them coming in through, you know, kind of the district process through, and the PVP and their district leader parts. I'm just not so much into having them kind of come from creative, energetic people that are not in this sort of structure.
So, can I ask a question? Do you feel like the Budget Advisory Committee doesn't have people that would represent all those groups?
Well, I don't know. I'm not on the budget advisory. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I'm assuming that they do.
That's
Yes.
That's what I was trying to ask.
But what this kind of idea that we put out a call for proposal is something else.
I think what my intention is that I'm not sure that people that attend the Budget Advisory Committee would think that they could bring forward anything for consideration. We've never said that.
They do.
They do.
You don't have to
Well,
worry.
yeah, but if they have a specific proposal.
Well, if I could, and I did put that right in my very first email to all of them, was, you know, that an expectation would be that they go back to their groups and bring forward their ideas, right?
Anyone else?
Well, just you have to remember there's a finite amount of money, and the vast majority of it is already pre-spent before we get a chance to fiddle with it to start with.
No, I realize that. It's just, I think there needs to be some discussion about what we're spending the money on, and it's, you know, like you can see we didn't have a huge discussion to pass this budget tonight. I would like it to be a little fuller and have more public input is my opinion.
Well, this is the year we're in, right?
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, so to me, it's very different, you know, so I appreciate your point on that. I mean, maybe what we should do is have maybe one or two more budget advisories, you know, with maybe a little more emphasis on if they have something else to bring forward, bring that forward to the board, and the board then could say, well, here's the things we're thinking of, right, and give that list to the public for input. That, to my mind, would probably sort of close the loop.
There was an intent to do some in-service on staffing instead of
Absolutely.
by inviting the entire board to come see how the processes work. So
Which process?
the staffing processes
Which is
for
about
teaching.
88% of your budget,
Yeah.
pre-spent.
I'd like to just put in my 2 cents at this point for us taking a look at the 4-day week. was interesting yesterday in the presentation, John Abbott mentioned School District 64, which he considers a really good example of 21st century learning. And one of the things he mentioned was 4-day week. And I noticed in the budget, I make a really clear link with the amount of dollars that you see in substitute teacher salaries and the 4-day week. And it's one of the advantages that other districts have found. So there's money in our current budget that we could be reapplying to other types of activities that, I mean,
Well then, if
we're
Sheila
going to
is
have a full
interested-
discussion. You're going to get me on that
So
one.
then I'm going to ask that, okay, so Sheila would like to bring a proposal for the district to consider a 4-day week as
Yeah.
part of the budget process. What would she do?
Well, like I say, I think there's sort of an intermediary step. If we do the back one and then come to the board says, yeah, plus we want to add, here's our ideas, or they can send them to the back themselves. We have no issue with that. And then the board would make the decision, what do we really seriously want to consider, and what would we like to have people give us their feedback on. Which one is
Suggesting
that?
that individual trustees on their own would send something
Well-
unilaterally to the back without the board taking a look at it?
If that's the desire, to have some.
General public can do that.
Okay, so what do you guys think of that?
I actually was seeing it as something more as part of our strategic planning process, that we might do some visioning around things like that. We need to do some education. We need some
Okay,
work.
so
and
then
not,
it's
that's
not-
why I haven't brought it forward
Okay,
into
so,
this budget.
okay, so
But
then
you
it's
could be
not,
thinking about it.
okay, so we'll
Yeah.
try to stick to the topic, which is budget, right?
Right.
Okay, I know.
It is, but it becomes a place that there's a process now that could look at it.
So the question is, would you like an opportunity for us to, as individuals, forward things to the Budget Advisory Committee, and I would presume the principals, vice principals for consideration?
Sure.
Or would you like that to come from the board as a whole?
Well, I think if you turn around and say it's the board as a whole, you're going to have to debate beforehand, so you might as well send the individual.
I don't want us to prejudge the outcomes of that process by us giving more weight to what the group as a whole need to balance. We can't do the favoritism thing until we get something back.
So you'd be in favor of, if someone wants to submit something on their own, just do it?
Yeah, they should know that it may just fall by the wayside, because ultimately I want to hear what our senior administrators, having consulted with everybody, think we should be doing.
Okay? Fran?
And I would lean towards hearing back from Budget Advisory Committee, and then if I have something to add that I think may have been missed, then add that, as opposed to at the beginning of my individual input.
What?
If I could, just so people are kind of aware of it, we do have those guiding principles for BAF, and I think, people should review that first before you kind of put something forward, if you're going to do it that way. Because, clearly, the 4-day week wouldn't comply probably with the collective agreement as it stands now, so therefore it would fall off, right? If you go through the criteria, which I could send out to everyone again, you'd have to understand that would be the process that BAF should put on it before they brought anything forward. And then it does talk about links to the achievement agreement and enhancement agreements and board goals too.
They can be interpreted quite broadly.
Yeah,
You
they
can
can.
make anything fit.
Yeah.
So are you okay with that then? If you have something you want to add, go ahead and add it, or after it comes back to us?
Yeah, sure. And then,
Okay, so what sort of dates are you looking at for meetings?
I was going to have it back on the 7th. Well, just about everybody's sick who said they were going to come, so I will get something together for it. And then I was going to have another one shortly thereafter, so I'll probably be looking at trying right after spring break to have the next one. I can't remember if that's the 28th or whatever it is.
28th is the Monday?
Yeah. So I'll probably plan for that, and then back on the board, because the board meeting should be the 29th.
So what about public, for the public, meetings for the public, so they can
Well,
give input?
I'd just, again, thinking out loud, bring it back as a list for the board, and the board can then, make a decision on the 29th. That would be my hope.
a decision on the
Like-
list?
Well, of what you want to do, how you want to proceed from there. If you want to have, you know, a discussion about what goes on the list or not, or what direction you might want to give the Budget Advisory Committee to represent that, or for the public, whichever way it looks like. There's lots of time. I mean,
End of June, right? Are most of the staffing things covered in here, or not?
that's,
As far as I know, yes, it's we're going to full speed ahead when it comes to staffing. So that my question to the board, maybe because I can figure it out, and before all those proposals come through, do we know how much money we're wanting to spend? Because I mean, if it's $100,000 versus $600,000, depending on the type of proposal we're getting. So is there a number in mind? Because that might make a difference.
Last we heard, I think, what you said was it would be approximately even?
it would, as I mentioned in the briefing note, right now it would be 10-11 would be even. What we were looking at with the actual budget itself for 11-12, there was actually a small surplus, but I think given we're going to be talking about the rentals, that's probably reduced to even as well. So it is kind of at this point break even. As you're aware, we do have some reserves, but I think one of the things that we bring to a discussion with the board, you know, wants to go down the road of considering more, just sort of how does that play out over the next couple of years, would be a discussion I'd like to have, of course, at that time.
You've done that in the past where you had a live sheet there and changed it so you could see over 3 years where we're going. I'm conscious that you said that maybe we're sort of starting to see a leveling out here, and we do have a little surplus still. And
well, certainly, and just off the top of my head, because I didn't prep for this particularly, but what I was looking at is I think we're very close to the $2 million in surplus again, because I think, as I predicted and showed in that briefing note about the current budget, we are probably going to do a bit better than what I actually anticipated. So we're at about $2 million and running an even budget. So what I was looking at was trying to find a way to, I always use that word, control descent on the budget, because you don't want to use up too much in any one year, but over the next few years actually trying to make it so the changes we had to make to the budget were fairly small. If we spend more now, of course, that becomes more problematic over the next few years. Like right now, looking at what we have in reserve and sort of trying to forecast what the ministry will do with the funding, I think we're in a good spot to be able to actually, you know, over the next few years, actually have very small reductions in staff, and probably just based on the actual number of students who actually go down. Sorry, my voice is starting to go.
I know we're all like this in trouble here.
I'm not succeeding very well.
Do you want a candy?
Yeah, they've got one.
yeah.
I used to get them into the stop. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I just find it kind of, I do find it a little odd that we don't have a lot of money to play with. If it seems to me that most of the people who might be bringing programs forward would be teachers or whatever, that there is a process already where they talk to their principals, they talk to their other colleagues, they're already in the chute. It's the kind of thing that takes planning. And so if somebody's initiating a new program, then that's a different process that goes through a discussion about what it looks like and how it might work, and working with our administrators and budgeting for next year, not for this one. I would be really surprised to find types of proposals that aren't already in play that would fit in time for this year's budget.
We've had some pretty amazing proposals that people have put together for quite a number of things that we rejected for one reason or another. And then I think last year, because we had a deficit coming, we said, please don't send us anything.
Except that. So the thing is, like, it's just you're not going to, the proposals that people have come forward with ultimately might make the table if they work through the process over time, but
they've been shelved, and I think that they're not in play for consideration past proposals that we've received, are they? But they're not on someone's radar. Like the principals aren't saying, bring us the last 3 years worth of rejected things.
Then they haven't been a priority.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It just takes me a minute to get the vocal cords working. What we've really done, it's kind of the opposite of that. And it may not be the best, because we've looked at things we've cut in the past, usually first too, and brought that board of, like, what were the things that, were painful to lose, rather than trying to add, because as my cautions around adding a lot are always, how sustainable is it, right? And that is also one of the guidelines that the BAC, of course, looks at as, we should really always be looking at our horizon. If we put something back, can we sustain it for 3 years? I think, the chance of anything being successful or having much of an impact, if we can't sustain it for at least that window, is a difficult sort of spot to put people in. Because you're right, it may raise some expectations, and maybe if some, helps them at a particular point in time. Right? And of course, I'm probably stepping back even further. I think, really looking at the staffing levels themselves and saying, if you had a choice, what would you do? Would you put it in some other specialized programs, or would you put it in staffing levels? Again, still with all the same parameters about what does the future look like, and can we, say to pick one, you gave secondary an improvement of ratio, right? Could you carry that on for 3 years so they have an impact? That would be sort of a question.
So Sheila, then Linda Marie, then Fran.
I just wanted to comment too that I think in our, we start early in discussions with schools right after, the Christmas vacation around next year. So I think, what Sheila was saying, I think there is lots of conversations that go on in schools, and there will be more as they go through their staffing processes around how they organize. So I know it might not bring forward their wish list, but I do sense, and I think Alan would concur, that when we meet with folks and talk about sort of, at best, sort of a rollover budget, we're in this sort of sustainable mode for the next 2 years. I don't think people are coming forth and say, well, there's a brand new program I've wanted for 3 years. I don't sense that there's that expectation. And sometimes by asking, you actually elevate expectations. We don't, as Danny said, it's a finite amount of money. So just my 2 cents worth.
Likewise, I think to build on what both have been said, is that knowing that you deal with staff early on, because right now we're going to just beginning string staffing already, is that the fact that you don't have much to work with, or if you want to add, it may raise expectation to ask people to send proposals as well, because now they'll think they have all this money to spend, and then if you cannot support that, then people might feel let down, especially if they spend a lot of time at this very busy time of year to kind of put their proposals together. So I think that we have to be careful about expectation and the hope, because I think already a rollover budget communicated that not going to be as drastic outside of declining enrollment, and I think that sustainability is what probably creates more stability in the workforce, and I think that makes a big difference.
So there's the automatic consideration of things cut last year, and I'm thinking of staffing in particular. What's jumping to mind is the VANA cafeteria worker and the teaching for elementary challenge. Are those automatically considered without anyone having to raise those?
Their groups bring those things forward automatically. We've actually heard about them.
Okay.
Anyone else?
But
Dan?
you have to realize who's there, because the teacher's there, QB's there, ESPA's there, Ed's there, French Advisory's there, DPAC is there, Fine Arts is there. Pretty well everybody's related to education is represented. But that's generally the only people that are going to have any kind of input.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all the comments. We haven't had an opportunity to talk as a group together at all, really, about this yet, and I thought it was important that we talk about it somewhat and get an idea of what you've got planned and in store for us. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Retirements and resignations?
All right, I'll try to 45. Those are resigned by this 23rd. Keith Stoker, teacher at Northbound College, has retired February 28th after 23 years of service to the district. And Jennifer Nolan, an educational assistant at Cumberland Junior, retired February 4th after 31 years of service to the district. And both of these folks are considered as a retirement function in 2011.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it?
Move management report.
Second. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Finance Committee?
No report for the meeting.
Fran, you're going to give the Policy Advisory Committee report?
Yes, we're continuing on with our policies as we do. The travel policy, just an update on that one, because it's been around for a while, and I think, of course, we may be close. We're waiting clarification from a lawyer with respect to the waiver forms. So that's what hopefully we'll be looking at the next meeting.
Did you want to speak to some of the items that are brought forward for motion, or?
I'm happy to do that. If they tell me, would you like me to do that for Tom? Yes.
Fran was the chair of that meeting, so I thought.
So for the purchasing policy, the motion being that the board adopt revised policy 3003 purchasing as presented.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on that? I have a question. Is there going to be any work with respect to the regulations on this?
That would follow next.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, will that be including a definition of, or a defined process for how we go about obtaining RFPs for, and when we might put something out on an RFP process rather than making a direct award for the purchase of services or goods or whatever?
I believe that's somewhat covered in already, but will we update that? Yes, absolutely.
Well, I had a look in it. I mean, it says things like the things that are going to be important are the costs. It should be the lowest cost. Things that I remember the last board we had added in there that we would, all things being equal, give greater weight to local bidders and so forth. And so I think that in light of the questions that some members of the public have had with respect to the RFP process that we underwent with the operational review, I looked at the regulations, and to me they are not clear enough and do not provide the board with enough direction as to how that works, and the staff or the public with enough assurances that those would be fair processes. And I think that it's very important that that is very well defined in our regulations. So both when we might do an RFP and if we did one, what the process would be. So that's my feedback on that. So is it automatic that the regulations are going to be reviewed?
They're under review now. They won't get to Monday's meeting, but they are under review.
But they're
and under revision. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so any further discussion? Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Second item there, Fran?
The second item with respect to overnight travel, they were at a few board meetings ago now. The board decided that approval for travel be authorized by the superintendent or designate as opposed to being required to be before the board, as we saw before us earlier today. So the changes were made to reflect that, and that's what's before us now. And I'd like to move that the board adopt revised policy 6031 MR3, overnight travel outside of BC, and policy 6031 MR4, outdoor travel activities, as presented.
Seconder? Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Education Committee, there was a recommendation coming out of that. Do I want to speak to that, or you want to speak to it, or free?
Doesn't matter to me, then. You want to speak to it, or shall
If you want, sure, because it was, I tried to synthesize what I heard at the education meeting.
That wasn't all yet.
Oh, sorry.
Just sorry, just we got a procedural thing here.
As each report.
As you
then,
come,
yeah.
okay. Go ahead. Move receipt of support then.
Move this to the report.
Second, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so at the Education Committee, we were discussing policy 8001, use of school facilities. And as it says in the minutes, we directed or asked kindly that Secretary Treasurer Lennox would craft a new policy and bring it to the next regular board meeting February 22nd, 2011. You want
Sure, if I could. I really tried to do a minimal sort of amount of work and try to revise it. So I think on page 62, I think, 63, the number 6 was the only change there. And that was where the board was looking for a small fee, or a modest fee to book for the whole period for anybody who fell into the bay. So that, I just put that there. So I think that's okay. I have no issue. I think that one will be fine. The other one on page 69, which is where I think the bulk of what people were looking for was sort of who ended up in Group A and who was in Group B. So I've tried to capture all those in there. So that was like the Boys and Girls Clubs, scouting organizations, recreation associations that are child-centered. So I've moved all those, as you can see, they're deleted from Group B, moved up to Group A. We did maintain, as I mentioned there, the extra charges for carbon neutrality for the adult groups, and those few that are left in Group B. Now, the only one I struggled with was the community schools. I'm not sure I quite captured in Group A, so that would be all of the community sort of associations, being the Hornby Island Community Association, the Denman Island one, and the Cumberland one. I have it down there as community association programs, and largely for youth. Now, I wasn't sure when I went back to my notes if that was what the board was wanting, or if they just wanted a carte blanche. We're not going to charge those 3 community associations anything. So that was the only one that I was less clear in when I got through with it. So I was actually hoping we could give you a little feedback on that.
Sheila, do you recall how that went?
I think that the primary focus there was for youth, and that the community schools are prepared certainly to contribute towards adult programs that they run for adults. I'm a little worried about the wording though, because I think that there are many community associations that we deal with and that rent. And then there are the community schools, which are actually, they have some kind of designation and recognition within the district's operation as our community. Like, those schools are not just considered elementary schools, they're considered community schools, right? So, to me, community association, I mean, that means that we're also waiving the Fannie Bay, community association or whatever, which, if it's for youth, great. But I think still, it's not really highlighting the community schools per se as separate from that, and I think they are. To me, I would say they are our operations. I don't even know if I would put them into a category that has to do the rental at all, because I would say we as a school district embraced, endorsed, designated those schools. So that's perhaps going further than people want to go, but I don't think it's reflected in the wording.
So your perspective is that any kind of program that community schools would offer should be rent-free? Is that what you're saying?
I think so.
And?
Just on the little piece about sort of not having any control over the community school piece of it, is a liability issue. We need to know who's in the building and that kind of stuff, right? So there really still needs to be paperwork around it. And, anyway, I'd be curious to hear what other people thought of. If that is the desire, I think I could just change it to that wording and just say, rather than community association, community schools, and then associations associated with children. That's the desire.
Jen?
Yes, I think the original intent was the 3 community schools. It seemed kind of ridiculous that we were providing them with funding with one hand, taking it away with the other.
What do you guys think?
I agree with Sheila. I don't think we should be charging for any of the community school programming, whether it's for children or adults. Shouldn't matter, because we're giving them the money and then taking it back seems a little ridiculous.
Frank?
I agree as well, but I have some other questions.
I agree too, so there's the answer on that one. Okay, Frank, go ahead.
Just wondering about a couple things. One was sports camp fees, which I thought we weren't going to charge based on the briefing note, or unless I've misread it.
No, we didn't talk about it, so I left that one the way it was. And you're right, that was one. But that's, to my mind, is one it doesn't. Again, I'd almost have to look at those on an individual basis. Some of them are very much child-oriented, and some of them aren't. And some of them are actually people putting on the camps to provide employment for themselves.
And I don't have a strong opinion one way or another. I think it just would need to go. We need to go one step further in clarifying, so we don't have to wonder with every sports camp that applies, what we're
If-
doing.
If I could, at this point, the flexibility is what I like in it.
Yeah.
Because I can then look at it and make a call about whether it really is one that I think, is there primarily for the students or if it's, for another person. And I always ask how many of them are our students.
But if we say sports camps, with a fee of charge, page 69, so
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that, but then I think we just need to have that in here, because right now, it's where fees apply, so it's not clear where do fees apply, or how is it decided? You're just,
That's the flexibility piece, right?
but if
Yeah.
there's even a line as, like, in terms of guiding the discretion,
Yeah.
like if it's mainly our students, whatever it is, it just seems like there's a piece missing in terms of providing that flexibility. I agree that the flexibility makes sense, but it's just complete, like there's no mention of it at all. So anyway, that was
Paragraph?
Yeah, it's the next paragraph talks about being sponsored by schools. Right. And that, to my mind,
Yeah,
does
so
help,
there's
'cause that's where it falls,
That
whether
kind
it's,
of makes it
whether
more
it's our
clear, yeah.
students or not, right? Because sometimes I find the school may sponsor it, but it's not our own students sometimes, or it's across the district. For that particular
But
study.
if everyone else is comfortable with that,
You good with it?
that would work. And then there were a few other ones. In Group A, the approved out-of-school care programs and boys and girls clubs. And then is that different from the daycare rentals that are on page 74? So that seemed to be a discrepancy on a first read to me.
Sure. So one is, I think, where it may be a rental for a period of time versus a permanent one. Like what I look at for the school care ones is I'm usually looking at a longer term. This may be where if they want to rent a room for a year to try something. Like to my mind, what we did at Aspen was they had, a room. I can't remember the exact word. We did almost like a pilot for them in 1 year. And then when it switches over to be something more permanent, then I switch over to the other policy.
And
So
then,
that could have an ongoing or something there.
Yeah, versus a
Yeah,
straight
okay.
up rent.
Long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then the last question was on page 70, for youth activities under community sponsorship for school-aged children. Then there were the fees. So
Okay.
to me, that seemed to contradict the lack of fees for the Group A groups.
Right. Well, that would be on, yeah, true, yeah. Okay, I can fix that. Yeah, you're right, 'cause I missed that. Okay,
Yeah, and that
good.
was it.
If you want, I'll fix it up and bring it back another time.
Anyone else? I got a question, on
Yeah, just a minute.
page,
Need to move it.
page 69 of Group B.
Oops, sorry.
Do we currently charge CUPE and the CDTA rent?
I don't believe they actually use any of our facilities. They may have at one time used them for offices and stuff, but I'm not aware of any of this.
Okay. So they don't use it?
Not that I'm aware of. It's certainly not a large use thing.
So, what should we do, Len, if there's a few
Sure.
tweaks to this? Should we just pass it
I'll
as
bring it-
amended, or do you want to bring it back?
I'll
What do
bring it
you-
back, sure. And I think I'll take this as, we'll implement. It's a management regulation, right? So we'll change as, what we see here in terms of how we deal with people. But bring it back just so people see it and agree. So that's what it says.
Okay, so at the next meeting, maybe. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move to see your report.
I so do.
All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. So, Janice is not here, and I'm not sure what all she wanted to have with regards to this report. Maybe we could put it on again next month. Okay, go ahead.
Janice and I both attended the meeting with John Abbott, and thank you for that opportunity. It's fantastic.
This is about this, so those...
Yes,
Okay.
but you'll notice on the final paragraph there, it says that the trustees attending the VISTA meeting passed the following motion.
Yeah.
That VISTA requests member boards to forward to VISTA their district's definition and vision for 21st century personalized learning to inform discussion at the next meeting. So Janice just wanted to stress, especially as we had that great session, that we as a board with senior management and maybe with some of the other partner groups should develop a vision of 21st century learning. We need to have some conversation about what it is, what we've been learning about it, and how we would kind of sum it up.
So I received the same request, but in a different way. The BCSTA forwarded a request to me to provide that information. So I did forward that to Sherry and asked where we might have a conversation about that. And she thought probably at Education Committee who could do that. So we would look to have maybe that conversation in the next. Okay. So Sheila and Corrine, can we just leave it to you to organize that with Sherry then? To have that further conversation? Is that okay? Okay. Sheila. Okay, and this next one is also on the agenda from Janice, but she's not here, so I don't know if somebody wants to speak to it or make a motion with regards to it.
I'm planning to attend that conference.
Do you want to make a motion?
Sure. I'd like to move that any trustee wishing to attend the Columbia Institute workshop on civic governance, March 25th, 26th, may do so from Austin's World District. Did everyone else get the information about it? It was circulated? Yeah. Anybody else like to come?
I would recommend that. I did receive information on this as well, but again, through different sources. The Columbia Institute is an organization that unions support, and I was given an option to go actually free of charge. My union would have paid my way there. So I would recommend Janice is in a union. She should check to see first if she could get sponsored to go with those funds if possible, and if not, I'm in support of approving it.
It's not just dovetail at the end of the BCSTA AG.
No, it's totally a different time. BCSTA AGM is around the 15th of April or so.
Oh, wait, okay. So, 23rd, 24th, 26th. Fine.
Anyone else like to speak to it? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. New business. Trustee Goldberg.
Last fall, in a Common Valley Record editorial, there was a call for trustees, as well as other municipally elected officials, to record votes made at public meetings. I thought that was interesting. In thinking about it, it basically is the recording of votes in favor of, against, or abstaining. And I agreed with the reasoning in the editorial, being that constituents have the right to know how their elected representatives have voted. So I think it's important to remember that we're all here as elected representatives. And I think it also helps people in the election process determine who they may wish to vote for. I've also noticed that there seems to be an increasing number of abstentions, but I'm not sure if there aren't, because they're not generally recorded and things move fairly quickly, and I never really know, well, not never, but I often don't know who voted how. So I think if abstentions would be recorded, then there would likely be explanations of the reasons, and I think that would be helpful to everyone. So I know that, and I recognize there is a downside to recording votes in the sense that a yes vote is fairly clear, but a no vote doesn't always mean that somebody didn't support that position, but there may be various reasons. But I do believe that people who are interested in what those reasons are should make the effort to find out what those are. or certainly can make that effort by contacting the trustee if they wish. And so I would move that trustee votes at public meetings, whether for, against, or abstaining, are recorded in the minutes.
Anyone like to second that? Okay, so probably procedurally, I'm backwards here, so sorry about that. If everyone's all right, we could just go on with this? She shouldn't have spoken to the motion before making it. So just allow her to reverse it, if that's all right. Thank you very much. Okay, anybody like to speak to that?
Does Debbie want to speak to it?
I will.
Okay, Lynn?
I think the obvious thing is this will slow things down, right, to actually stop and do this. This will create a bit more work. And I guess the principle that I find, excuse me, is, about supporting board decisions once they're made, because once they are made, it is the board. I think this might be a bit divisive against that, because people will be saying, later, well, I want that recorded so people know how that happened. I don't think that's supportive of, moving forward in that way. And I think it makes the vote more important than what, the actions you take, which is really what, as a board, what you want, is you want those actions to speak for what you do. And of course, you have to change the bylaw, because that's not what it says right at this time.
Anyone else like to speak to it?
I feel like I'm comfortable with the option that people have to ask for their vote to be recorded. I understand it was, the request coming to the municipal council. There was some debate about it. I'm not quite sure why. I don't think did any of them actually adopt that practice?
I could ask these two right here.
Right,
They can tell us better
You
than...
might know.
I don't think it was.
Yeah. I thought Courtney did.
Courtney did?
I think Courtney.
Comox didn't?
If Comox didn't, I think that's.
Cumberland, what did they do, do you know?
I don't know. I think I don't know that I want to. I think I'd like to mull it. I guess I could have been mulling it a little bit, but.
Danny?
I don't have any problem with having the vote recorded or leaving it the way it is where you can request your vote recorded. But like Fran says, you've got 7 people sitting around here. If one person votes on an issue and 6 abstain, it passes. So it basically passed with a majority. So at least that way the public gets to see who voted and who didn't, and how they voted.
I kind of like the idea of recording the votes. Much like what Fran said, I do believe that we are elected to represent the people, and it's kind of nice to be able to see how they're representing you and how they're voting. And you're right, Len, after a decision is made, it's a board decision. But if I choose to make a point to Debbie, record my vote as that sort of makes a statement in and of itself without my coming out and saying they made the decision, I was against it. It's basically what I'm doing when I do that. So for me, if every vote, it sort of takes the power away, I guess, from the ability to say I wasn't with them on that.
Sure. I guess that speaks to the other piece about trustee roles, responsibilities. Really, what's in there is that you're supposed to consider your decisions for the whole district, not for your area of representation. That's what it's trying to get at. What you're speaking, you wouldn't sort of fit into that.
So I'm going to speak in favor of the motion. Actually, I think we are doing this for the public. Yes, we do have to make decisions with the whole district in mind, but that the district doesn't elect us. Our areas elect us, and they should know, I think, how we vote on things. I know, I don't think I've done it with this board, but in the past there were times where I felt it was important for the public to know how I voted, and I did ask to have my vote recorded. I know that a couple of trustees, or maybe 3, have done that with this board as well from time to time, and I think it does make a statement. It is easier and more dramatic. It's easier to discern when people are against what the majority of trustees seem to be doing, and it is a dramatic thing to do. I admit that. I'm a theater person. It's dramatic to say, record my abstention, record my no vote. So this just makes it easier. There it is. If people want to take the time to download the video of our meetings. They can sit there and look. It's not too easy sometimes to see who's putting their hand up or not. But this way, they just read the minutes, and it's easier for them. I think that it is inviting some discomfort for trustees, because sometimes when you do vote against something, it really, it doesn't do your argument justice. You voted no against something, and maybe the rest of your colleagues voted yes. You don't know why the person voted either way, and the explanation is of benefit to people. And so I think the public does need to go and see. Well, no, the public does need to see further explanation from people with regards to how they vote. But I think still in practice, it does make us accountable and transparent.
Just on the explanation piece, I think if you, and it's been a while since I've read it, but I think Robert's Rules of Order don't actually allow for that. Like, particularly around abstentions, like, discussing, sort of why you do it. Yeah, it's just.
No, I mean for the public to come and say, Susan, why did you vote this way? I read in your minutes you voted this way. Why did you do that? And then you can provide an explanation.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, okay. So, and you're right, Bill, once the vote's made, the vote's made.
I'm just a bit uncomfortable about making sort of a change in our whole procedures with two of us absent. And I don't see an urgency on this matter.
Well, procedurally, what will happen is we'll pass a motion on this tonight, and we're going to need to change our board procedural bylaw. I think that how I would rule on this is that we could begin recording our votes right away, and that next month we would read the bylaw for sure 2 times at our next meeting, and then if trustees were in agreement unanimously, we could read it a 3rd time, and if it wasn't read a 3rd time that evening, it would be deferred to the April meeting.
Well, I mean, that's making a decision and then going through a process about the bylaw, then I'm uncomfortable about us making the decision at this point with 2 people. I think we should defer.
So just to challenge you a little bit on that, you voted on a number of other things this evening and didn't have the same concern, and actually you have more protection with respect to this because you're going to have an opportunity to vote at another meeting after this, whereas some of these other items were done, they're finished. There's not an opportunity to vote. It's tricky. It's tricky, but you have more of an opportunity to influence the vote next month again.
Would it not be correct, though, that when we get to the point, once this is passed, we get to the point of voting on bylaws, it's just about language. The decision to do it is made. The language in the bylaw is what we would be discussing, because the decision's already made.
No, you can oppose it on whatever grounds you feel like it. Okay, so that's a pretty clear process. So, Fran, did you want to close?
Yeah, I'd be against deferring the item because we haven't deferred other items like the budget, and so I would be against that. Also, the 2 members who aren't present could have called in or made a specific request of me, or, well, I don't know procedurally, but could have asked someone that this is important to them against everyone.
They couldn't have made a request to have it off the agenda posted, that's it.
I'm still against deferring it because we don't defer anything else. We've decided to have a meeting, and if we've decided to have a meeting, then I think that's what we need to do is go with it. In terms, I just wanted to make a comment about the perception that it's divisive. I don't believe it has to be divisive. I think that if, and not to harken back too much or too often on my request for a code of conduct, but I think if we have systems and expectations in place, then we can agree to disagree. We can agree that we uphold board decisions no matter how we voted, and we can agree that even when we uphold board decisions, that we're entitled to maintain our personal decisions as well, as long as we're not undermining or not supporting the board decision. So I don't think that the divisiveness has to be a feature, and I think there can be protections put into place to ensure that the proper intent in terms of educating the public of how we're voting is the priority and not the divisiveness.
Okay. So the motion is that trustees vote at public meetings, whether for, against, or abstaining are recorded in the minutes. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you.
Oh, I'm abstaining.
So that actually, so it would be with the next item that we would begin. Which there's no more items to vote on. You gotta love it. Well, no, there is. We can vote on adjourning the meeting. No, we're not quite there yet. Sorry, I'm just being silly. We have a letter here from Minister McDermott with regards to BCPs. The board information. I actually have a copy that I sure hope that I brought. This is maybe a timely time to bring this up. There was a recommendation in the operational review with respect to computer systems, and I remember Sprott and Thompson talking about having someone in the district maybe become more involved with that.
We had to go through it.
Yes.
So I thought I would just ask with respect to that, oh no, I can't find it here, that the Secretary Treasurer and the Information Technologist review the training and compliance in the use of the available systems and that ways to improve them be identified and communicated to the developer. So I thought that kind of fit really well with this, and I wonder,
Yeah. If I could, Bill actually goes to some of the meetings. He just returned from one, I think, last month sometime, where he does get a chance to tell them what he thinks of their system. And I won't repeat any of it. But, yeah, so he certainly has that opportunity. And he has become more and more involved over time and trying to help the schools use it to the best of our ability.
okay, that's great. Thank you.
But are not a lot of the problems with the system itself, it's not our ability to use the capacity of the system, it's not.
Yeah, it is, the whole system is being reviewed by the ministry, as you know as well.
So I guess another itself, not a new one.
Getting it from the same people that did the liberal pay notice.
We'll be able to vote on our phones on that one. Okay, so any other comments about this letter? Okay, so we'll get to questions and inquiries. Anyone have any questions or inquiries? No? Well, there's two leftover questions from, I think it was our January meeting, that I thought we haven't gotten to these in our sessions with the mediator, so I thought I would like to answer them this evening. Shelley Gayu, you asked, this is what's typed on your page. So in that same vein, would you please tell us where the initial meeting with Mr. Sprott was conducted, the name of the firm for which you sought legal counsel, and what questions did you pose to this lawyer before awarding the contract? Were they given the full history of the situation? Did you follow their advice? Date of legal advice before or after the RFP put out? Was the law firm Harrison Company or Kaufman Califf? So two-pronged question. One is, where did the initial meeting take place? And I think that you already have that information because it was contained in the FOI request that went out, and the meeting took place at Kareem McClellan's house. Your questions with respect to the legal advice that we sought, the board never discloses on any matters what their legal advice is or the process they go through with respect to that, so I would not be able to comment on your question with regards to that. The second one was, Shanna's not here, but I would like to address her question. Her question was, during the last board meeting, you, Trustee Barr, indicated that Trustee Weber had held secret meetings himself, and in a newspaper article you also indicated that Trustee Caton had made a request to have a trustee-only meeting. Through you, Madam Chair, would these trustees care to explain? And so, February the 7th, they gave an answer on that day. And your follow-up question to me was, how are those meetings the same as the initial meeting with Mr. Sprott? Well, we have had a couple of meetings, as I said at the last meeting, a total of about 6 hours with with a facilitator, and we have had an opportunity to talk about meetings that people have had. And we have found that Trustee Caton and Weber have both engaged in private meetings with staff. And I'm not going to go into any more detail, so I would say the meetings are not similar in any way, because the meeting with Mr. Sprott was done with the full knowledge of the board, and the meetings with Trustees Caton and Weber were not done with the full knowledge of the board. And that's my answer. Thank you. So, does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn, since we have no questions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.